So welcome this evening. My name is Susan, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this event. I've been trying to get to Lex's workshops and events that she's been having for a long time. I keep missing them, so I'm really happy to be here tonight and hear her talk about data and UX, two of my favorite things. So the LA UX community is a very vibrant community. As you can see, there's a number of events coming up. I want to especially highlight World Information Architecture Day in February of 23rd in 2019. And tomorrow, the Cluj event on design ethics. I'm pretty sure there's still tickets available for that. Noel is going to be sending out a newsletter from the LAUX meetup, which I'm assuming you all are a part of, with all of these events, so you don't have to worry about missing them, except for the Cluj event, obviously, is tomorrow. Are there any other announcements that people want to, job openings?
Yes. I'm Alan.
Here, Alan.
Partners. I'll do it. Hi everybody, my name is Alan Natali. I'm the UX director at Entertainment Partners. We're in Burbank. It's essentially the paycheck company for Hollywood. And we are looking for a staff level interaction designer or product designer, whatever we're calling ourselves these days. So if you have a card or you want to give me your information, I would love to take it. We're looking to hire very soon, full-time position. Fun people, like that guy with the red hair over there. And it's a very, very data-driven. We're here working because we work on a data product, so we're also learning about that too. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, good to see you. Susan. Anybody else? Yes.
Alan, I think you guys are my credit union.
Yes.
Yes? You guys are my credit union. Okay. I'm Jason. I'm the head of technical recruiting here at PatientPop. We are looking for 2 people right now for our UX UI team here. So please bear that in mind. If you want to get an idea of sort of what we're looking for as far as design aesthetic, please visit our website. We just recently refreshed it. You know, we are growing like crazy. We've doubled in size year over year for the past 4 years. We are on pace for our equity event at the end of 2020, in which case our equity event will be larger than Snapchat's. So, if you want to join the rocket ride, reach out. Thanks.
Rocket ride. Anybody else? Nope. Okay. So I'd like to thank our sponsors. Jason is a busy guy. He has 2 other companies that he runs. One called Work Labs, which is a consultancy that brings great people together to do great things. And they are actually also looking for talent. So you want to go back and see him for those, I guess those are like consultancy type positions. Yes, yes, as opposed to full-time here. And then You Are Welcome is a mobile platform that provides resources for immigrants that helps them build their lives in a new country, things like healthcare, education, and finance. And then, oh, there's Grace.
Right here.
Yeah, oh, you have your own microphone. Look how that works. So Grace is going to talk about PatientPop. They're our main sponsor. They provided the food and the venue. So go ahead. I'm going to let you introduce PatientPop.
I'm Grace. I'm the UX person here at PatientPop. I need help. That's why we're hiring. If you have questions about what we're hiring for, you can come to me and ask me real questions. And I also have Jason's business card, so if you can get in touch with him if you want to work here too. So thank you everyone. PatientPop is kind of like a practice growth platform. We help small and medium-sized medical practices have their own website, online presence, help them grow their reputation, do online booking, that sort of thing. So just helping them like kind of run their practice and be more up to date in the 21st century, something like that.
Yeah, PatientPop.
And I think that is about it. Lex?
So I'd like to introduce Lex. I have the pleasure of introducing Lex. She's very fun and interesting she's a good presenter and she makes it fun. So I'm also very impressed I had a chance to meet with her this afternoon, and early in her career she was influenced by Jamie Levy, as I know a lot of people in this audience probably were, and that it was very clear to her early in her career that doing the right thing for the business was very important as a UX designer, because Jamie's all about strategy. So I'm impressed to know that Lex kind of went off and she did a lot of her own research and investigation into data analytics tools and how to incorporate those into UX. And then over the years at the different companies that she's worked at, she's really kind of developed her own process and thinking around this. So we all have the privilege of hearing about that tonight. So please help me welcome Lex.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you all for being here on a Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I will introduce myself in a second, but first I would like to have you introduce yourselves to each other. So I'll have you say, obviously, your name, where you work and what you do, and then also your favorite 90s TV show. And I'll just give you a second to do that. So just introduce yourselves real quick.
I am Frank. We introduced ourselves as well. This is my fourth week at General Assembly, so I'm a student learning UX. And then favorite 90s TV show. I kind of watch X-Files. Well, I mean, I guess The Simpsons counts as a 90s TV show, but that was 88 and it's still on technically. I guess 90s is really when it was good. So, is there anything else?
All right, I'm hearing people quiet down. Did everyone introduce themselves? You need more time? I mean, I don't have that much time, guys. Speed it up. All right, are we ready now? Yes? You guys all know each other? Trade business cards? You know each other's social security numbers? Should we just continue this way? Should we just keep going? Everyone just hang out? All right, I'm gonna get started. You'll have more chances to talk with each other. That's why you're sitting at tables like you're at a wedding reception. Thank you to Melissa. Everyone thank Melissa for the tables. Yes, thank you, Melissa. She walked away, but. All right, Noel's favorite 90s TV show is Friends, for anyone who is interested in that. All right, so I'm Lex Roman. I'm a product designer who focuses on growth, also known as a growth designer. We are not going to talk about that tonight, but I would be happy to talk to anyone about growth design who's interested in growth design. How's the mic, by the way? Can you guys hear me? It's too loud? It's too good? It's good. Okay, great. I spent the majority of my early career in consulting, so I worked at Kluge, if any of you are going to their event tomorrow night, at Carbon 5, which is just down the street, and then at Neo, which is no longer with us. And then I moved into startups, and now I'm at Envision. Is Dan here? One of my coworkers was going to come. Dan, are you here? No. So Envision's all remote, so none of my coworkers work in LA, but Dan was visiting today. But I guess he doesn't find me that interesting. And as Susan mentioned, my UX education was through Jamie Levy at UCLA Extension. Did anyone take her class? I'm like, probably two. Yeah, awesome. So Jamie taught UX through the lens of business strategy. and we learned Lean Startup methodology, we read Eric Ries and Ash Maurya, we learned about validating concepts, we learned that design has impact and that you can demonstrate it, which I learned after that. Not everyone learns when they're learning design. And certainly not everyone practices, which has been my experience. So when I was at Kluge and when I was at Carbon 5, I would work with clients who usually had a goal, right? They're paying us all this money, they wanted to do something, get conversion up, more donations, get people to buy stuff, get more page views, engagement, my least favorite. Engagement, we want engagement. Engagement's not a thing, we'll talk about that later too. And I would say, okay, great, well, where is that now? So what does conversion mean and where are you with it now? Oh, we don't know. Oh, no. Oh, you know, I think we have Google Analytics, but I'm actually not sure if we have that data. And I kept hearing that over and over again. And it didn't matter if I was talking to a nonprofit, you know, a solopreneur, or a large company, large 50,000, 100,000 employee companies. It was happening everywhere. And I started to say, well, I can't exactly show the impact that design has if I can't measure it, and if you haven't measured the before, right? And that's why I've gotten so involved in this. And I've, as Susan mentioned, just developed all these skills so that I could make sure that we're measuring the impact so that we can have that impact. I did just want to mention that I'm giving this talk at 2 conferences. If you know anyone in Austin or Seattle, or if you're going to be at these conferences, I'll be doing it again. And I'm going to start with another question. How many of you know who defines data strategy at your company? Like, who's in charge of data? Just raise your hand if you do. No one? Okay, 1. Joel, thank you. Okay, 2. Okay, cool. So a little bit like, maybe I do, I'm not really sure. Okay, what about who defines events? Who defines what events you're going to track? Who knows who does that at their company? More people, that's great. Is it engineers? No. Okay, is it data science? No? Interesting. Who QAs events? Do you know who QAs events at your company? Some people do. All right. This is why we're here, right? Because there's a lot of confusion and unclear ownership, and as a result of that, we can't trust our data. You can't have an impact if you don't understand what kind of impact you're having. And that is everything from what is our goal to is that event even firing? Which is a question that needs to be asked, right? You're like, well, 0, no one's using it. Maybe someone forgot to put it in. Maybe it's named wrong. That stuff happens all the time, right? So this is what we're going to cover today. I'm going to talk about what's going wrong. This is my favorite new section of this talk, what's going wrong. We'll talk about some ways to get back on track. It will apply to you whether you're starting from scratch or sort of course correcting. And then we'll talk about actioning on data, which as designers and PMs and product makers, I'm sure you care about. This is why you're here. And we're going to do it through the lens of this 90s TV show, Clarissa Explains It All. Does anyone remember this show? Good. Okay, good. I was like, maybe everyone's too young for this show. It was like 1992. I was like 7. But so if you're not familiar with the show, Clarissa explained her life in great detail and would pause to tell the audience what was going on. And she often used data, ridiculous data, which we'll see some of. She also had a pet alligator, which is like just so random. And if you have no idea about this show, you'll just enjoy her outfits. All right, so Clarissa's going to explain what's going wrong with data. 3 areas of what's going wrong with data. First, strategy. Lack of strategy, unclear strategy. Then execution of data. Things are falling apart in the execution of the strategy. Lastly, literacy. We don't understand what we're looking at. I have a different understanding of data than you do. Yeah, that's huge. So let's go through what each of these means. First, no vision of success. Leadership. Who is in charge? No one has a shared understanding of what success looks like. PatientPop is like way ahead of the curve with these posters that when you came in, that was like, these are our goals, you guys. Are you hitting these goals? If not, step into the elevator. These are the goals again. Like, are you hitting them? How are you contributing to this? It says that on the poster. How many people have that at their office? Do you work at PatientPop?
No.
Oh, nice. Well, that's great. I think it's great. We need more of this, right? Everyone should be raising their hand. We're all clear. Here's our OKR. Here's how I contribute to that. No clear ownership. Who owns the data tools? Who owns event tracking? Who owns QA? Who owns analysis? All of the different things. And if you're sitting there with your worksheet, you see all the things that I think need ownership on your team. And there's more than that. You're tracking too many things. Blah, data, blah, look at all this stuff, cool, whoa. GA is the worst, but look, just like garbage, just like, blah, we have all this data, we're tracking everything. Once we get past the strategy, we have problems on the execution side. No data. Oops, we forgot to instrument our platform. I talked to a major healthcare company, not this one, a different one. They're redesigning their entire platform for patients, no data. Just like, we're just gonna not do that and just take a guess. I mean, that is shocking and scary, and that's how you end up with healthcare.gov. Clarissa is really unhappy about that. Data's not all in one place. Some events are going to the database, some are going to Google Analytics, some are going to the marketing team's favorite tool, some are going to the growth team's favorite tool. It's a big cluster of stuff. No naming conventions. Are there any engineers? A couple, yeah. Same thing in code, right? Naming conventions are key. If you don't have a naming convention, I name an event differently than Susan does. We end up with purchased item, bought item, checked out with item, like just so many different things coming into the system. And then we try to pull the report and we say, what does purchase item mean? Oh, that's not firing anymore. What is it called now? You know what, I'll just wing it. I'll just make a decision, I'll just make a call. Lastly, literacy. So this is both just general literacy around data that I think the general public should have, right? About questioning data and looking at information that someone else put together for you. And then in addition to that, on your teams, it's about the shared understanding. Very often I hear people say, we're working on engagement. What does engagement mean? What do you mean by engagement? I guarantee you it's different than what I think engagement means. Also, we don't need to measure engagement. It doesn't pay us. I'm looking at this chart and I'm going, what's happening here? I have no idea. What am I looking at? Who made this chart? What does it mean? Can I make one? How do I do that? We're in a bad state. We're in a bad state. So some variation of this is happening at every company I've ever been with. And I'm sure it's happening at your companies because very few of you raised your hands. Even less than I thought. I thought a lot of you would be like, yeah, we got it. Because that's what I think the problem is. I think people are saying, it's handled. I don't really know who's handling it, but someone's got it covered because we're still in business and my paychecks come in. So the big message from this workshop is that no one's handling it. And if someone is, you should know their name. So we're just going to take a few minutes. You have these worksheets on your table. Grab one. There's a couple pens. I don't have that many pens, so you might have to share a pen. In that first line, it says, our team struggles with this and this. And I just want you to think about, what does your team struggle with when it comes to data? Or what do you struggle with? And I'll put up my causes up here. So you can choose one of these. You can make up your own. So just take a few minutes to do that. Think about what you're struggling with, what your team's struggling with. Are you missing a pen? You need a pen?
Yeah.
Just ask someone from an adjacent table. I'm sorry. My last workshop, people took all the pens. Are you raising a pen? That's nice. Pass the pen. There you go. A couple pens up here. What a community. All right, we'll just take a few more seconds to do that. I see some confused faces, so I can't wait to hear what you guys put down on these sheets. All right, who wants to share? Does anyone want to share the challenges their team is having or what could be better? You can frame it in a positive way too. Grace is back here, ready to take your feedback. Yeah, Jamie up front, here.
I think the biggest question I have with data is like, how are we establishing what is actually valuable and what is the priority? That's like the first question. And then the second question is, how are we using whatever we're deciding are the values, how are we determining what that value is, how it's being established? Is it relative to other things? Is it something that's like an external value that's been established by like a brand? And then what I see happening a lot is, even if we've established values and we've measured those values, do we come back and say, were those the right values? Do they actually work? And usually the answer to that is no.
No, you got your values wrong? Yeah, the goals, sometimes the goals are off, right? Yeah, I mean, those posters, they look so beautiful and ready to go, but they're not easy to create, right? What do we all want to measure? What's important to the company? Yeah, anyone else? A couple people in the back? No? Yeah. Thank you, Grace. Doo-doo-doo.
One of the things that my company struggles with is what's easy to collect versus what's right to collect.
Yep, that's really hard. It's especially hard with anyone who has a partially offline business, right? Like if you are services on company like Airbnb, right, or Uber. That is challenging. We'll cover a little bit of what you guys mentioned, and I would love to talk with you more, too. All right, now we've talked about our challenges, so let's talk about some ways to get back on track. Clarissa's going to talk about how to get it right. The big thing to get right is to think of data, your data strategy, your data execution as a product in itself. So that's why we're here, to talk about UX of the data strategy, the data execution. So you think about it through the lens of your users, which is all of you and everyone else who works at your company. Anyone who needs to act on data, what's their experience like? What do they need to be looking at? So all the things that go into product development go into data. Who owns it? Who's driving the train? Who's defining things? What does that definition look like? What goal are we after? Is it the right goal? QA, feedback, all this stuff is still relevant for your data team or your data execution. So we'll just talk through each of these and we'll work through the worksheet on each topic. Who's in charge? This seems so easy, and I think at some companies, maybe it is. As you can see on your sheet, there's a lot to be in charge of. So it's not as simple as saying like someone is in charge of data. There's always many layers to what that means. I think it's key to make sure that everyone on the team knows who owns what. If I'm looking at Google Analytics, which I'm never looking at because I hate Google Analytics, but a lot of you are using it, I know, because I survey people. If you're looking at Google Analytics and you say, you know what, I really think that something's off, do you know who to go to? Do you know who to ask for help? Do you know who even instrumented that in the first place? Knowing who owns stuff is really important. Clarissa doesn't know who owns stuff. So let's take a second on the worksheet, go down to the ownership section, and next to each of those lines, just write the name of the person at your company that does that thing. Who owns each of those things? If you don't know their name, you can put their department, but it's better to put their name. These are just for you. Just take a second to do that. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can come around and help you out. Oh, good, we have a question. Grace, where did you go? Oh, you have a question right there. You're just waving.
Anyone have a thing to share? Like,
Any questions? No, we're good. We're heads down for a second. I'm not going to make you share these, but you guys are so quiet. Yeah. Oh, what do I mean by QAing events? Actually QAing, so when this might be over-explaining for some of you, but I'm going to do it anyway. When you instrument an event in your product, you need to make sure that it's firing to whatever analytics tools or to your database. So that is a QA process. All right, I'm going to move on, but just a show of hands, were there any blanks on your sheet? Anyone have any blanks? Yeah, good. Okay, so I think this hopefully is a tool for you to go back to your teams and find out who does these things. Obviously, it depends on your interest in knowing about these things, but if you are here, I'm going to assume you want to learn more about data, so it can be useful to know these things. They can help you get more involved. The next thing we need to deal with is definition. So both the goals, the high-level strategy, what do we care about? How do we make that beautiful poster, make sure we're all aligned on it? And how do we execute the measurement of that? So on that I'm going to pick on PatientPop. I hope that's okay. It says NPS is one of the goals, right? So first of all, does everyone at your company know what NPS is? What tool are you going to measure NPS with? Where is that going to pop up in your product? So all of that definition is product management, right? What do you guys want to achieve? What's your team goal? Jamie, to your point, I mean, I could throw some frameworks at you for how to do this, but I really think it's about conversations. What do we care about? What do our investors care about, right? How do we get profitable? How do we get users? I think you can sometimes overcomplicate it with sticky notes and, OKR workshops. I think it's really about conversations. There are some tools out there to help you with this, right? The Pirate Metrics framework is one. Brian Balfour has a new one called Growth Loops, which if you follow Reforge, his new growth school, you can check that out. Growth Loops is another interesting framework to look at. But I really think it's just about like, hey, CEO, what are you presenting for our Series B, right? What are we aiming at? And then breaking that down to what matters on the product teams. So if I say to you, I am Brian Chesky at Airbnb. Let's say, okay, I come in to replace Brian. I'm the new CEO of Airbnb, and I say, I want more people booking experiences. We've developed this whole thing. Let's get more people doing it. How do you articulate that? How would you articulate that in a way that you can measure? So let's take a look. Your third box down on your worksheet, there's a section there about quantifying your goal. So I'd like for you to just articulate that. How would you write that down for that beautiful wall poster? Just a few minutes of that. There aren't that many activities, you guys, so don't get too tired. There's just like 2 more. Yeah, so you would rephrase this, make it quantifiable. How would you phrase this goal for your team, and how would you measure it? I can't tell if you guys are like bored, confused, or you're just super fast. Is anyone confused? A couple people are confused. Okay. Tell me what you're confused about.
I don't use Airbnb that much. When you say booking experiences, you're talking about just booking places to stay.
Yeah, sorry. That was probably an oversight. Yeah, so Airbnb not only has places to stay, but they now have experiences like surfing, cooking classes. You can book those now. Sorry about that. I thought I picked something ubiquitous, but I guess I didn't. Is anyone else confused about the exercise? No? You guys are like, we nailed it.
Could you define events a little bit more specifically?
I will later. Yeah, so I would not talk about events in this. What I'm looking for here is, what's the thing you put on that poster? What's the thing at the all hands you say, this quarter we're going for, what is that statement? And I'm sort of purposely not telling you how to do that. All right, you guys are very quiet, so I'm going to assume that you got it. So this is one way that you might do that. You might say, I want to increase number of unique users booking an experience, right? It's not too, yeah, right. So a couple key things here. One is that I'm saying unique users, which is more specific than saying, number of people booking experiences. I'm saying unique users. That will play into how we analyze this report. I'm also pointing to the place in the UI where we hit this metric. Another thing that is really, really key to have alignment on. How do we know when people booked the experience? This is when we know. We as a team know when they click that button, that's one for our goal. So this is the kind of thing that would go on that poster, go in your OKR doc. That's the thing you want to hit. What do you need to know to reach that goal? You now have team alignment. We're going to increase unique users booking an experience. How do we get there? Why aren't they doing that? How do we measure our way to insights? If you already have a product, you can lay out your flow. If you don't have a product, you can do a journey map or a similar exercise to sort of get a sense of, what the product is going to look like. And you can talk through, what do we care about? How do we know that people are on track to book an experience? What are those touch points, that critical path that they're going to take? And you probably want to measure that whole path. What do you care about? How will you know where people are getting tripped up? How will you understand why you're losing them? That's what you need to track. So on the back of your worksheet, I laid out these 4 screens. Ignore the bottom section and just look at the top 4. And tell me, I know they're in black and white, I'm really sorry, I was cheap about the printing, but tell me what you care about. Circle on that UI what you would want to track to know that someone's going to book an experience. And then give me an event name. What would you call it? So an event name is going to be the thing that's going to appear in your analytics. So what would you call that thing? Just take a few minutes to do that. Definitely raise your hands if that is confusing. Or you could just walk out. I'll just take the hint. So tell me where I make what you care about measuring. Search, or I want to do that. I know it's kind of hard to see. And what would you call that thing? Who needs more time? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you need more time. Nope, you guys are good. You're like, this is super boring. This is why we have other people that do this in my company. I don't do this. I don't care. I'm not a numbers person. All right, so here's an example of how I might do this. I personally would err on the side of your critical path. So the first thing that I do when I'm working through a product is, what's the happy path? How do I know that they're on the way to success? You also might want to consider those edge cases, but I would caution you against over-instrumenting, especially if this is the first time you're doing it. And I would also, there's also a conversation to be had about error tracking and how much of that falls to engineering tools rather than success measuring tools like analytics. And then on the right, you can see my naming convention for events. There's really not a right answer for a naming convention, and it is probably a good idea to talk with data science and engineering and come up with that convention together. But there's a couple things to keep in mind, especially for any of you who are doing this without those partners. One is the length of the name. If your names are too long, when you create charts, it's going to be hard to see those names. And that may not seem like a real thing, but it's annoying. So if I have a bunch of search experiences and that all gets truncated in the charts, then I have to hover over everyone to see it, and that gets obnoxious. Another thing is how specific and how vague. So you'll notice I didn't put user roles in the event name, like guest did this or host did that. That might make sense for your company. It might not. So just talking through these things and making sure that everyone's aligned around what makes sense. You might later change it, but it's good to have a convention. All right, once you have all of those things, your goal, your events, where they are, you want to document it. Is anyone here using Amplitude? Raise your hand if you're using Amplitude. Yes, love Amplitude. This is an example from Amplitude. So they have in their analytics platform a built-in taxonomy. It will just load up all your events that you've sent there, and then you can click on each one and say, this is what that means. So this is their demo project. Their events are pretty well named because they're an analytics company, but let's say search song and video was searched content, and it was vague. I could write in here, this is what that event means. If you're not using a tool that has a built-in taxonomy, make a spreadsheet. Just make sure that everyone has access to it. Here's all the stuff we're tracking. Here's who owns that on the team. Here's what it means. So on the bottom, I have a little thing called document your hero event. Your hero event, if you remember, is confirm purchase or confirm booking. I can't read what it says. Confirm and pay. So that button there, when they click, they book the experience. Tell me what that event is called. Name it under event name. If you want to, you can give me additional information that you'd like about that event. For example, what the experience name was, right? You might want to know that. You might want to know the location of the experience. So you want to know that they booked it, and then you want to know maybe some characteristics about that. That's what goes in your properties. And then fires when is describing that user behavior. How do we know when that event fires? Just take a few seconds to do that. Raise your hand if you need any help, or if you'd like to complain and get your money back. Yes? Oh, sorry. Good. Quiet. I have a question here that I think maybe people would find relevant. So the question is, why do we care about fires when? The reason that we care about fires when is that very often it becomes confusing the longer your company's been around, the amount of events that you have. It's not always very clear what each event means. So if the event name is not clear about what that exact moment in time is, you need to document that so that everyone knows. It's not actually the button click, it's actually the confirmation email that they get. That's the moment in time. It's that difference that makes you build the wrong thing at your company, right? If it turns out that everyone is clicking that button, they're all hitting an error in the confirmation email, and you didn't know that because no one documented when it fires, you've designed the wrong thing and wasted a whole quarter of resources. Yes? Yeah, it is always just one action. And I would, there's like active and passive events. So you might have events that your system fires, like if you're doing identity verification that are not user generated, those are fine too to document. So you would just say fires when we confirm their identity, right? And those, when you're using analytics tools, you can set those up because you don't want that to count in your like active user numbers. So you can sort of differentiate that stuff at that time. All right, I'm just going to show an example of what I might do. This is oversimplified for sure, because you probably have more properties than this, but this is actually not the hero event. Sorry about that. So this is an earlier event, selected the experience. So I've chosen my experience. The event name is selected_experience. I want to know, what experience did that person choose? I want to know that comedy in New York is more popular than surfing. So I want to know that, so I can filter my view that way. And then maybe the theme is like comedy, right? So comedy versus concerts versus surfing. And then I want to know when it fires. It fires when they click to view an experience. And I think it's great if you can document this stuff in a visual way like we did. That is great. It's a lot to ask, so don't hitch your wagon to that, but I think just writing it down is worlds better than not doing it. I just want to mention QA because it's everyone's favorite thing to do, especially designers. It's super key to make sure that this whole loop is coming through on the other side to your tools. Really, really key. It falls down all the time. Like, how many of you have ever had a bug in your product? No one? No one has bug-free products all around? Get your engineers out here. If you've ever had a bug in your product, you know that you can have bugs in your events. So it's really important to run the QA loop. If you're interested in doing this, I do workshops that are much more tactical about how to do this. I'll just show a quick example from Amplitude, my favorite analytics tool. I'm not paid by them, but maybe they'll pay me if I say, no, I'm just kidding. In Amplitude, you can also do this in GA, it's just not as nice. And I'll show it, I show it in my workshops. But you can pull up a stream of your user ID, and when you interact with the product, see what's firing. So you can say, okay, well, it's selected experience, and so said that went out to our development environment or our staging site. Let's just see, I'll go on there, I'll click it, did it come through? Does it have the properties? Are they named correctly? I used to work at a company that had subscriptions, and then our Android developer named something subscription management, and the iOS developer named it subscription management. So when I filtered the views, I had to add 2 different properties. Check all that stuff. Check it now, because if you get it all in there, it's a pain to clear it out. Lastly, just like with your products, make sure you get feedback. So how is it working? How is design feeling about it? How's product feeling? What's confusing? What's missing? Is it working for data science, right? What's working, what's not? How happy are people with the tools you're using? Do people wish you were talking about data more? Do they wish you were talking about it less? Probably not, but maybe they do. Maybe we're like, no, we don't really need data. Just make sure the feedback cycle is happening, right? And you obviously need an owner for this. Maybe it's product, maybe it's data science. I've had data scientists send out team surveys, just, how do you like our tools? How do you like our weekly, analytics meeting? Find out if this stuff is working on your team. You can also, if you're not in charge of this, which many of you might not be, especially if you're just getting into design, just feel it out with people. Just see. Whenever I join a company, I sort of just try to feel out like, hey, like, are we liking Google Analytics? Are we liking Mixpanel? Like, is that working for people? And you'll uncover stuff through those conversations. It's like, well, actually, our CEO doesn't trust it, so that's not great. Like, you know, just having those conversations with people. I just want to take a second to see if there's any feedback or questions about all the stuff we've covered until this point. Yes?
So what is the difference between QA and feedback? Like, who gives which?
Great question. QA makes sure that your events are firing correctly, that they're named correctly, and that they're firing at the time you expect them to. Feedback is qualitative. So feedback is just like, is your team happy? Do they feel like they're being heard? Are you really all on the same page about that stuff? Yeah. So that would happen through like a team survey or through a retrospective, you know, any number of ways that you get feedback from your team about how you work together.
QA is what you do yourself?
I do QA myself. If you don't want to do it yourself, which most of you probably don't, make sure that someone on your team is doing it. I do it myself because I want to know that that's firing, that I can trust it, and that I can measure my success as a designer. If you're not as interested in getting down in the details, make sure that there's a clear owner on data or engineering or product.
This is a really dumb question. Does that stand for question and answer? Or?
No, not a dumb. So QA stands for quality assurance. Yeah, so it's just quality testing. Yeah, so I mean, hopefully many of you are doing that with your product, just like, does this go here like I expect it to? That's all you're doing with this. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Sorry, maze the table.
Like, how do you define the hero event of a product that doesn't rely on transactional actions? Can you give example about that?
Say the last part again. Does it rely on?
Rely on like transactional action.
Yeah. So the hero event was sort of a just for that exercise. There's a hero event. That's not like Airbnb's hero event by any means, but. You know, people talk about key performance indicators, so that might be one of their key performance indicators. Every digital product, every product has some success metric. So that's, I would always sort of back out into like, how do we know we're successful, right? So if I'm a nonprofit and I'm doing, you know, tutoring kids, well, how will I know that we're successful as a nonprofit? What does that look like? It's probably donations, amount of tutors that we have, amount of kids getting matched with tutors. What are those things that we're looking at to know that we're doing our jobs? And so the hero event in this case was just, you know, drilling down from that. How do we know that we can get to that North Star?
So the basic idea is to find the right metrics, right?
To find the right metrics? That is exactly what we're trying to do. Yes, definitely. Like, are we all on the same page about where we're going? Who was it Jason that was like the rocket ship to the star, to the, I guess to the, yeah, to the stars. How do we know that we're on the rocket ship to the stars? How do we know that? It's really key that we all know experiences booked is going to get us our IPO, right? That we all know what that is, and that more tactically as product makers, we know how we measure that thing. So it's not just like, oh, we're measuring conversion. Who measures that again? Oh yeah, I have no idea. Someone showed me a chart. Do you know what's happening on that chart? I don't know what's happening on that chart. Weird, I wonder how we're gonna hit our goals this quarter. We're not. All right, I'm gonna move on, keep going. Because it's getting late, you guys have to work tomorrow. I have to work too. I do have a job. All right, speaking of work, Clarissa is going to explain how to put this to work. Very simple 3-arrow diagram. Who doesn't love these? Again, how do we act on data? We have very explicit conversations about what we're looking at. Clarissa shows us this chart. She says, hey guys, look at what I found. What's going on with pizza? You say, I don't know, Clarissa, where did you get that number for pizza? How do we know that pizza's firing? Are you sure pizza's firing? Also, what's going on with shopping? Where did you get this chart, actually? Why are we looking at this at all? Have you talked to anyone else about this? You ask so many questions. You don't have to do it out loud. You don't have to, you're not like trying to discredit your coworkers in any way. You're just critically looking at what you're trying to understand, right? Let me change. This is the same thing with the news, right? Look at it. Does it make sense? Why doesn't it make sense? Do you understand what's going into this visualization? Don't pretend that you understand it if you don't. I think designers are the most guilty of this, but I also see product managers doing it and even data scientists, which is partially why I'm here. It blows my mind that data scientists are like, yeah, we got this. We're all on the same page. And then they're like, hey, I actually have no idea what that is. Yeah, so no one understands. It's not just that you're not a numbers person. It's about the conversations. Make sure everyone is on the same page. Make sure other people are not pretending either. Oh, cool, yeah, so we all know what conversion is. Okay, so what is it again? Seriously, guys, people are shining you on all the time. This one is not on the worksheet. I have an interactive exercise we're gonna do. Grace is back there, she's gonna run laps back and forth. I'm gonna show you a chart that I'm bringing into a meeting, and I wanna know from you, what questions do you have about this chart? Totally out of context chart. This doesn't happen at work at all. Guys, listen, we're Spotify. Look at all these people that are barely spending any time on our platform. We need to get engagement up. I want everyone over here in the 1+ hours. Make it happen. What do you want to know about this chart? What questions do you have? You're going to fix this for me. How are you going to go about doing that? What do you want to know? Raise your hand if you have a question about the chart. Yeah, in the back. Is that a Neil? Hey, Neil.
Hey, Lex.
What's up?
So, which color is free and which color are the monetized users?
Boom, great question. Who else? I'm not going to answer these questions because I don't have the answers, but that is a great question.
I want to know.
How do we define a session?
Really important question. And a question that does not get discussed, and there's many support articles about on all of these tools. Really, really key. Did you have one?
I'm confused what the true and the none mean. True, what is true and none of what?
Exactly. What is true and what is none? Yeah, in the back. You have one in the back, Grace?
That was the same exact question that she was going to ask.
Yeah, great question. This is Amplitude's demo project. This is like sample data at its cleanest. What is true and what is none? Who knows? Anyone else got a question? Yeah.
Why 90 days?
Great question. Yeah, he's talking about, daily last 90 days. So that's the length of the chart that you've pulled. Yeah, constantly, should we be looking at a week, a month, a year? Yes.
Real question. This is made up, right? Or this is an actual chart that someone showed?
This is from Amplitude's demo project, so this is made up. But this is what happens all the time. This is what happens all the time. It happens to me every day. Guys, look at what's happening. It's crazy out here. And you're just like, what are we looking at?
Compared to what?
Compared to what? Great question, yes. Do you have anyone else? Okay, we can move on. All right, these are fantastic questions. All of you get it.
Wait,
Gold stars
more.
all around.
One more.
In what case would a 0-second event trigger?
Great question. Do we care about 0 seconds? Why is it on here? Yeah, good questions. Yeah, so if you're interested in playing around with this, this is Amplitude's demo project, which is free. You can sign up for an account and check it out. Okay, so we've asked all of our questions. You guys have asked all these great questions. You've gotten all the answers you needed. Now we need to build a shared understanding. So we've figured out what true and none are. We've figured out where free and paid is. We've talked about session length. We've got all that on the table. Now we need to say, what's going on? Why are more people not doing what we want them to do? So ask those questions of each other. Talk through that. Well, maybe it's an error. Maybe that event's not firing. Maybe the session length is too long. Maybe it was a holiday. Maybe Apple was down, you know, the App Store was down, no one could download. Like, sort of talk through all those cases. Maybe the dates are wrong. That's like my favorite personal error that I make all the time. It's like, forgot to change the dates. Are you looking at the right view? Are you looking at uniques? Should you be looking at totals? You know, is this even the right chart that we should be looking at? True and none. I mean, true and none's a real thing that happens. So, you know, you're sort of like, well, where's none? You dig into those users, you know, you talk through all that stuff with people. And that's, you know, you need engineering involved in that too, for sure. As you're doing this, you're also asking questions about your user behavior. Well, why 10 minutes? Where's that coming from? What might we be doing as a product team to make that happen? What are we not doing to make them go farther than that? Look at your UI, you know, do some customer interviews. Try to figure out what you think might be happening. Develop some ideas. I think there's a few ways to do this. One is you have your own product team. You're all working on engagement. No, I'm just kidding. You're all working on getting, you know, people to play songs. You talk as a cross-functional team. Another thing you could do, especially if you're at a smaller company, is build a cross-functional team of practitioners. Someone from product, someone from marketing, data science, you know, the C-level, whatever makes sense. And every week you look at all of your key metrics and you say, here's what we think is going on, here's the plan, right? So that working group, I think, can be really successful for smaller product orgs. And then lastly, if no one's down to do this with you, pin some stuff up in the office, right? You can do the TV thing, you can print it out, you can put it on Slack. I noticed this, here's what I've decided, here's what our team has uncovered, here's our plan. That's my least favorite. I mean, that's like not the greatest option, but it is better than never sharing that out. So we've done all the questioning, we now understand what we think might be going on. It's time to act. What's our goal again? What are we trying to do? Oh yes, get people to play more songs. Did we do it? Does the chart say, yay, raises for everyone? Did we not? Why not? What might be going wrong? We had another idea. Maybe we have a hypothesis. This is the time after you've weeded out all those technical things, you've tried your idea, you say, what can we try next? Maybe we could try this other thing. Let's go back to that sketch that so-and-so did last quarter. Is anyone hitting an error? Was there a weird promotion? Make sure that you're being very explicit. So make sure that everyone really understands. If you don't understand something, probably there's someone else that also doesn't understand that thing. So just like really check in with people, like, okay, cool, so we're gonna do this, right? Yes, okay, great. I'm gonna document that and send it out on Slack so that we all have that plan, right? We're almost done, guys. You're almost through it. It's past your bedtime, but if you don't have the information, you can't do anything about it. So you can't redesign your platform if you don't know whether or not the initial design was successful. Going back to my healthcare example, that is such a huge mistake. You have no idea if you're successful now. Why go through that effort? You're all paid to work here. Make the most of that time. I have an animation. Is it coming through? If you understand what's going on, then you can take action, right? Then you can have the impact that we all so much believe that we do. You can also ask for a raise. Highly recommend doing this. And do work that matters. Clarissa believes in you, so do I. That's it. Yeah. I was just going to see if there's any more questions, but otherwise we can just like... Are there any last questions? Just take a minute and do that.
I just want to know how how this all changes in your mind if the goal of the data is not to improve quality of a product, but to actually package and sell the data itself.
Yeah, so you guys mentioned that in the beginning. This is really not as much about that, but I would say that you have users, so all of this applies to them in the same way that it does to internal users. So there's that. I mean, I think knowing that these are the challenges that teams have, you could maybe head some of those off, right? And one of the reasons I love Amplitude so much, and I'm going to get like a jersey sponsored by them, is because they very clearly talk to teams and say, you know what, no one really knows what these events mean. We should build a taxonomy into the product. So, you know, that kind of user-centric, it's really about just being a UX designer, right? And like listening. I would look at them though, if you guys are doing database, because they're great. Anyone else? Oh, in the back, yeah, Grace.
Thank you. You mentioned QA and getting into the details. As it relates to QAing yourself as a UX rep or designer, are there any checklists or any resources or anything specific that maybe you've seen that's a good practice to look over and QA?
I mean, if any of you practice Agile, there's this idea of a definition of done. Like, how do we know that a ticket is done? So, like, my team will make sure that the events are part of that definition of done. So the checklist is like, the user can actually do the thing that the story was about, you know, it does this thing, and this event fires. Like, that would really be the only checklist. And then I'll write in the tickets the event name, all the properties I want to see, all the values. I mean, I'm very detailed with that stuff. Someone on your team needs to be, it doesn't have to be you, but, you know, product manager, whoever is writing those tickets, it needs to be all there. And then, you know, duplicate that in your taxonomy. So here's the ticket, it's shipped, it's now in the spreadsheet, so when it's in production, we know what that event is. It is really easy to QA events though, so if you're ever looking at a chart and you're like, I wonder if that's really accurate, pull yourself up in your data tool, click through the UI, see if stuff's firing. And ask someone on your team how to do that. If you don't know how to do it, ask someone. All right, one last question. No? Everyone's got it? One last one in the middle. Oh, Brady's got it.
Coming from behind you.
Thanks, Grace.
I'd like to thank everyone. A wonderful spread of food. I'm a mother, UI UX designer, and this is very informative, and thank you very much. I had a great time.
Thank you very much. You know, the food was a bonus. I had no idea about that. PatientPop, you guys, keep them in mind.
This was awesome. First, it's something I want to implement, and that's kind of my question. Like, what does this look like implemented, and what's care and feeding like, and how does this work with like, you know, just from this, I'm thinking, well, I've got to incorporate like search analytics, and maybe marketing launched a campaign and that drove people to the site. How do we like corral all of those? Like, it's awesome, but it's another shingle for a UX designer to hang.
Yeah, totally. It is. It's like a whole job. Yeah. I would say that you start with a conversation about satisfaction in the existing tools. So like I was talking to Joel, who's right here. Joel feels like he's getting the data that he needs, right? Check in with people. Are you getting the data that you need? Well, you're not either. Did you not say that? Okay, Joel's like maybe sometimes getting the data that he needs. But you know, you check in with people and you say, how are things going? You know, and it sort of comes out of the need to do the work. So I would say, like, don't bite this off for your whole company, like redo all your product stuff. I would say, look at that OKR that you defined on your team. Are you measuring it? Is that measurement accurate? You know, just take it one piece at a time. One piece at a time. And just check in with people and say, like, ooh, no one owns Google Analytics. Maybe we can get an owner in place for that. That's a win. And then, you know, just layer by layer. The same way that you would deal with, like, tech debt or design debt, kind of, yeah. It's data debt. Yeah, but just the conversations, that's like my main thing for you guys is like, just ask people. Do they get it? They don't get it either. All right, I think I'm gonna leave it there. I think we have a little bit more time so you can mingle and apply for jobs with each other. And please feel free to come up and chat with me if you have more questions. Thank you all for being here.